The rain hammered against the hospital's back entrance like bullets against glass, each drop a percussion of my exhaustion. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of my locker, inhaling the sterile scent of disinfectant that had become as familiar as my own skin. 12 hours. 12 hours of emptying bedpans, changing IV bags, and dodging the wandering hands of patients who thought a nurse's aide uniform was an invitation. My reflection in the small magnetic mirror hanging inside showed someone I barely recognized anymore. Dark circles carved shadows beneath my eyes, and my auburn hair, once thick and glossy, hung limp around my face, dulled by cheap shampoo and the hospital's harsh fluorescent lights. 23 years old, and I looked 40. "Emma, you coming?" Sarah poked her head around the corner, her own exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. "Go ahead. I need a minute." She didn't argue. We all needed more than minutes these days. I pulled on my threadbare coat, the one with the broken zipper I kept meaning to replace, and stepped out into the November storm. The cold slapped my face immediately, rain mixing with something that felt like sleet. My ancient Toyota sat in the far corner of the employee lot, as far from the building as possible, because I'd arrived late this morning. Again. The walk felt endless. Water seeped through the hole in my left shoe, the one I'd been stuffing with cardboard for the past 2 weeks. My paycheck wouldn't come for another 5 days, and even then, most of it was already spoken for. Rent, the electric bill I'd been dodging, the collection agency that called 3 times a day about my mother's medical debt. I fumbled with my keys, fingers numb and clumsy. The car door groaned open, and I collapsed into the driver's seat, shivering so hard my teeth chattered. The engine turned over once, twice, then nothing, just a clicking sound that might as well have been laughter. No. No, no, no. I turned the key again. Click, click, click. I dropped my forehead against the steering wheel, willing myself not to cry. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Crying meant giving up, and I'd promised myself, promised my mother before she died 6 months ago, that I wouldn't give up. The knock on my window made me jump so hard I hit my knee on the underside of the dashboard. A man stood in the rain, but somehow the storm seemed to bend around him, as if even the weather knew better than to touch him. He wore a black coat that probably cost more than my car, the fabric so fine it seemed to repel water rather than absorb it. Dark hair, meticulously styled despite the downpour. And his face. God, his face was the kind that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty, but it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Even through the rain-streaked window, I could see them, cold, calculating, the gray of storm clouds right before lightning strikes. He gestured for me to roll down the window. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger, but what choice did I have? I was stuck in a dead car in an empty parking lot with night falling fast. The manual crank protested as I lowered the window halfway. Rain immediately began to seep in. Car trouble? His voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe. Old money and older secrets. "Dead battery," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "It's fine. I'll call. At this hour? In this storm?" He glanced at his watch. Sleek, silver, probably worth more than I made in a year. "The nearest tow service is 40 minutes away. Assuming they'll even come out in this weather." How did he know that? I studied him more carefully. Behind him, barely visible through the rain, sat a black SUV with tinted windows. I could make out at least 2 figures inside, both watching us. "I can give you a ride." It wasn't a question. "I don't know you." Something flickered in those gray eyes. Amusement? Annoyance? "No, you don't. I'm fine waiting. You're shivering so hard I can see it from here. Your lips are turning blue." He pulled out a phone, sleek, expensive, and spoke into it without taking his eyes off me. "Marco, bring the car around." I said I'm fine, and I'm saying you're not. The SUV's engine purred to life. "You can accept the ride, or you can sit here and develop hypothermia. Your choice." The SUV pulled up beside us, and the man opened my door before I could protest further. His hand, God, even his hand looked expensive, with perfectly manicured nails and a watch that caught the light, extended toward me. I stared at it. Every rational thought told me to refuse. Strange men in expensive cars didn't offer rides to broke nurses' aides out of kindness. There was always a price. But my teeth were chattering so hard I could barely think, and the warmth emanating from the SUV's interior was like a physical pull. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and I felt a jolt run through me that had nothing to do with the cold. He helped me out of my car with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the predatory way he'd studied me through the window. The SUV's interior was like stepping into another world. Leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent, heating that immediately began to thaw my frozen limbs, and the subtle scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Danger, maybe. Or power. I slid into the back seat, and he followed, settling beside me with the casual grace of someone accustomed to people moving out of his way. The driver, Marco, apparently, didn't so much as glance at me in the rearview mirror. Where to? The man's voice was closer now, intimate in the enclosed space. Maple Street. Building 4C. The address sounded even more pathetic, spoken aloud in this vehicle that probably had more technology than my entire apartment building. He relayed the information to Marco, who pulled out of the parking lot with the smooth efficiency of a professional driver. Silence settled over us, broken only by the rain drumming on the roof and the quiet hum of the engine. I could feel him watching me, studying me with the same intensity he'd shown through the car window. My skin prickled with awareness. You work at the hospital. Not a question. Nurse's aide. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the rain-blurred streetlights passing by. Long shift? 12 hours. Sometimes more if they're short-staffed. Which is always. You look exhausted. I finally turned to face him, irritation cutting through my discomfort. Thanks. Every girl loves to hear that. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. It transformed his face from merely handsome to devastatingly beautiful. And I felt something in my stomach flip. I meant, he said, his voice dropping lower, that you look like someone who carries too much weight. Someone who never asks for help. The observation was too accurate, too intimate. I looked away again. What's your name? He asked. Emma. It slipped out before I could think better of it. Emma. He repeated it like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. I don't need to know. The words came out sharper than intended, but something in his presence made me defensive. He was too perfect, too polished, too dangerous. Men like him didn't exist in my world except as problems. Another almost smile. Fair enough. The drive should have taken 15 minutes. The silence stretched, comfortable for him, agonizing for me. I became hyper-aware of every detail. The way his coat hung perfectly on his broad shoulders, the faint scar along his jaw that somehow made him more attractive, the gold ring on his right hand with an emblem I couldn't quite make out. You live alone? He asked suddenly. Warning bells rang in my head. Why? Curious. You're very curious for a stranger giving someone a ride. Perhaps I want to stop being a stranger. My heart kicked against my ribs. The way he said it, low, deliberate, made it clear he wasn't talking about friendship. I'm not interested, I said, but even I could hear the lie in my voice. Liar. The word was soft, almost affectionate. Your pulse is racing. I can see it in your throat. Heat flooded my face. I crossed my arms, acutely aware of how thin my uniform was, how threadbare my coat. Next to his obvious wealth, I felt like something scraped off the bottom of someone's shoe. Here. Marco's voice broke the tension as the SUV pulled up in front of my building, a gray, concrete nightmare that looked even worse in the rain. I reached for the door handle, desperate to escape the suffocating intensity of the man beside me. His hand caught my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop me. Emma. I froze, every nerve ending aware of where his skin touched mine. Take this. He pressed something into my palm, a business card, thick and expensive. No name, just a phone number embossed in silver, in case your car needs more than a jump start. I should have refused, should have thrown it back at him and run into my building without looking back. Instead, I closed my fingers around it. Thank you for the ride. It was my pleasure. The way he said pleasure made it sound obscene. I practically threw myself out of the SUV, rain immediately soaking through my coat again. I didn't look back as I ran for the building's entrance, fumbling with my keys, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Inside, I leaned against the wall of the dingy lobby, catching my breath. The business card felt like it was burning a hole in my palm. This was stupid. Dangerous. He was clearly someone important, someone powerful, someone way out of my league. Nothing good could come from whatever interest he'd shown. I should throw the card away. I climbed the 4 flights to my apartment. The elevator had been broken for months, and let myself into the tiny studio that constituted my entire world. The space was barely big enough for a bed, a kitchenette, and a bathroom with a shower that only worked if you hit it just right. I dropped my bag on the floor and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing my wet clothes. The card sat in my hand, the silver number catching the light from the street lamp outside my window. My phone buzzed. A text from the collection agency. Another threat about my mother's medical bills. I looked at the card again. This was insane. I didn't even know his name. But God. When was the last time someone had looked at me like that? Like I was something precious instead of something convenient. When had anyone offered help without expecting something in return? My fingers moved before my brain could stop them, pulling out my phone and typing the number. This is Emma. From tonight. Thank you again for the ride. I hit send before I could change my mind. The response came within seconds. I know who you are, Emma. The question is, do you know who I am? My breath caught. There was something ominous in those words, something that should have terrified me. Another message followed immediately. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. I'll send a car at 7. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. This was a bad idea. Every instinct I had screamed warning. But instinct hadn't kept the lights on. Instinct hadn't paid my mother's hospital bills, or put food in my refrigerator, or fixed the hole in my shoe. Maybe it was time to stop listening to instinct. Okay, I typed. His response was a single word that made my stomach drop and soar simultaneously. Good. I spent the entire next day in a state of anxious anticipation that made my hands shake every time I checked my phone. My shift at the hospital dragged endlessly, bedpans and vital signs blurring together in a haze of distraction. Sarah noticed, of course. You look different, she said during our lunch break in the depressing staff room that smelled perpetually of burnt coffee and disappointment. Different how? I picked at the sandwich I'd made from the bread that was 2 days from going stale. I don't know. Like you're waiting for something. Her eyes narrowed. Or someone. I felt heat creep up my neck. It's nothing. Emma Morrison, you are the worst liar I've ever met. She leaned forward, lowering her voice even though we were alone. Spill. I have a date tonight, that's all. Her eyebrows shot up. A date? You haven't been on a date since... I know. Since Michael. Since he'd promised forever and delivered 6 months before disappearing with my savings and my dignity. It's probably stupid. Who is he? I don't actually know. Sarah's expression shifted from curious to concerned. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, he gave me a ride last night when my car died. He was... different. And now we're having dinner. Emma, that's insane. He could be anyone. A serial killer. A chance, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. He could be a chance at something different, even if it's just for one night. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. And text me every hour or I'm calling the police. At 6:30, I stood in front of my tiny closet, staring at the pathetic collection of clothes that represented my entire wardrobe. I owned exactly 3 dresses, all purchased from thrift stores. One had a stain I'd never been able to remove. One was too tight. And the last, a simple black dress with a modest neckline, was the only option. I slipped it on, studying my reflection in the cracked mirror hanging on the bathroom door. The dress hugged curves I'd forgotten I had, but it was also obviously cheap. The fabric was thin, the hem slightly uneven. Next to whatever designer perfection he probably expected, I'd look like a child playing dress-up. My phone buzzed at precisely 7 o'clock. The car is downstairs. I grabbed my coat. the same threadbare one from last night, and made my way down the 4 flights of stairs on shaking legs. What was I doing? This was madness. I should turn around, text him some excuse, hide in my apartment until this moment of insanity passed. But I didn't. The SUV waited at the curb, sleek and black and utterly out of place on my shabby street. Marco stood beside the rear door, his expression carefully neutral as he opened it for me. "Good evening, Miss Morrison." The use of my last name sent a chill through me. I hadn't told them my last name. The interior was just as luxurious as I remembered, but this time there was a garment bag laid across the seat. Marco gestured to it as I climbed in. "Mr. Antonov thought you might want options," he said simply before closing the door. Mr. Antonov. So now I had a name. My hands trembled as I unzipped the bag. Inside hung a dress that made my throat go dry. Midnight blue silk that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, with a neckline that would show just enough and a hem that would fall to mid-thigh. The designer label inside meant nothing to me, but the price tag still attached made my stomach drop. $12,000 for a dress. I should have been insulted, should have seen it for what it was, a wealthy man assuming he could buy anything, anyone. But when I touched the fabric, it felt like touching water, like touching moonlight. I'd never felt anything so soft. A small note card fell from the folds. "You deserve to feel beautiful. D." Something in my chest cracked open. The privacy screen between the driver and passenger compartments was up, offering me complete privacy. I hesitated only a moment before slipping out of my cheap black dress and into the silk. It slid over my skin like a caress, fitting perfectly as though it had been made for me. How had he known my size? The question should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. When Marco opened my door 20 minutes later, we were in a part of the city I'd only seen in photographs. Towering buildings of glass and steel, streets lined with expensive cars and people who'd never known what it meant to choose between food and electricity. He led me toward a restaurant with no visible sign, just a discreet door attended by a man in a tuxedo who nodded as we approached. Inside, the world transformed into something from a dream, or a movie. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, each one occupied by people who belonged in this world of wealth and power. I didn't belong here. Every step in my borrowed dress felt like a lie. "This way, Miss Morrison." A hostess appeared, her smile professional and cold. She led me through the main dining room, past tables where conversation stopped, and heads turned to watch me pass. I felt their judgment like physical touches, assessing, dismissing. We climbed a curved staircase to a second floor I hadn't known existed. Here, the lighting was softer, the tables fewer and farther apart. The hostess stopped at a door at the far end of the hallway and knocked once before opening it. The private dining room beyond stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights sprawling out like scattered diamonds. A single table sat in the center, set for 2 with more silverware than I knew what to do with. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on walls covered in artwork that probably cost more than my entire building. And standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, was him. He turned as I entered, and I understood why people use the word devastating to describe beauty. He wore a dark suit that had definitely been tailored to his body, every line perfect, every detail exact. His dark hair was swept back from his face, revealing those storm-gray eyes that seemed to see straight through me. Emma. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer, or a claim. Mr. Antonov. I was proud that my voice didn't shake. Dmitri. He moved toward me with the grace of a predator, each step measured and purposeful. "And you look exquisite." Heat flooded my face. "The dress is... it's too much. I can't accept it's a gift." He was close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my head swim. "I don't expect anything in return." Everyone expects something in return. His eyes darkened. Perhaps, but not tonight. He pulled out my chair with old-world courtesy that felt practiced, automatic. I sat, hyper-aware of the silk sliding against my skin, of his hands briefly touching my shoulders as he pushed the chair in. When he took his seat across from me, I finally found my voice. How did you know my last name? My size? A slight smile played at his lips. I'm a thorough man, Emma. When something interests me, I learn everything about it. The casual admission should have sent me running. That's invasive? Yes. He poured wine into my glass, something red and probably older than me. But I wanted to ensure your comfort, your safety, by investigating me, by knowing who you are. He leaned back, studying me with that unnerving intensity. Emma Grace Morrison, 23 years old, orphaned 6 months ago when your mother lost her battle with cancer. Currently working as a nurse's aide at St. Catherine's Hospital, 3 shifts a week when they can afford to schedule you, 4 when they can't. You live alone in a studio apartment in a building with 17 code violations. Stop! My hands clenched in my lap. Just stop. You asked. I asked how you knew my size. Not for you to recite my entire pathetic life. Something shifted in his expression. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, the candlelight catching the gold of his ring. There is nothing pathetic about survival, Emma. Nothing pathetic about working yourself to exhaustion to honor your mother's memory by paying debts that aren't legally yours to pay. My breath caught. How do you... I know that you send half of every paycheck to collection agencies for medical bills that should have been written off. I know that you haven't bought new shoes in 8 months despite the hole in your left one. I know that you eat once a day so you can keep the electricity on. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but his eyes burned. I know that you're drowning, and you're too proud to ask for help. Tears stung my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. Why? Why do you care about any of this? Because when I saw you last night, soaked and shivering and so goddamn stubborn that you'd rather freeze than accept help from a stranger, I saw something I thought was extinct. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm. I saw someone real. A waiter appeared as if summoned by magic, placing plates of food in front of us that looked too beautiful to eat. Dimitri withdrew his hand, and I immediately missed the contact. We ate in silence for several minutes. The food was exquisite, flavors I'd never experienced, textures that melted on my tongue. I tried not to think about how much this single meal probably cost. Tell me about your mother, Dimitri said suddenly. I looked up, surprised. Why? Because she clearly meant everything to you. Because grief is still fresh in your eyes when you think no one's watching. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. She was everything. Strong, stubborn. She worked 3 jobs to put me through high school, to make sure I had opportunities she never did. The words came easier than expected. When she got sick, she made me promise I wouldn't give up, wouldn't let the world beat me down, and the debts. I promised her I'd take care of everything, that she didn't need to worry. A bitter laugh escaped me. Turns out everything was $140,000 in medical bills that insurance refused to cover. Dimitri's expression hardened. What was the name of the insurance company? Why? Humor me? I told him. He pulled out his phone and typed something, his movements sharp and precise. When he looked up, there was something dangerous in his eyes. Consider it handled. What? No. I didn't tell you so you could... Emma. The way he said my name made me stop mid-sentence. I'm handling it. This is not a negotiation. I don't want your money. Then consider it a gift for your mother. Tears threatened again. I fought them back, refusing to cry in front of this beautiful, dangerous man who seemed determined to unravel every defense I'd built. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. Last night was the first time we'd ever met. Was it? He tilted his head, studying me with those penetrating gray eyes. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? I've seen you before, Emma, months ago. You were coming out of the hospital, still in your uniform, carrying grocery bags that had torn at the bottom. You were scrambling to pick up cans before they rolled into the street, and you were laughing. Despite everything, you were laughing. His voice dropped lower. I couldn't look away. My mouth went dry. You remember that? I remember everything about you. He stood, moving around the table with fluid grace. I remember thinking that I'd never seen anyone so beautiful, so alive in a world that tries to kill spirit like yours. He stopped beside my chair, and I had to tilt my head back to look at him. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Dimitri, I want you, Emma." The blunt confession stole my breath. "I've wanted you since that moment 6 months ago. Last night, seeing you again, was fate giving me a second chance I don't deserve." His hand came up, fingers tracing my jaw with a gentleness that contradicted every dangerous thing about him. I should pull away, should run from this intensity, this obsession I could see burning in his eyes. Instead, I leaned into his touch. "This is crazy," I whispered. "Yes." "You could have anyone. Why me?" "Because everyone else is a performance. You're real." His thumb brushed across my lower lip and I trembled. "And I'm tired of performances." He leaned down, his lips hovering just above mine. "Tell me to stop." I couldn't. God help me. I couldn't. When his mouth met mine, the world caught fire. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, but when I responded, when I opened for him, it transformed into something consuming. His hand tangled in my hair, tilting my head back as he deepened the kiss, tasting me like I was something rare and precious. I'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never like I was oxygen and he was drowning. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Come home with me," he murmured against my lips. Every rational thought screamed no. This was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But I was so tired of being rational. So tired of being careful and safe and alone. Yes. The drive to his home, if you could call it that, took us out of the city and into the hills where the wealthy built their fortresses away from the world they ruled. Marco drove in silence while Dimitri sat beside me in the back, his hand possessively wrapped around mine, thumb tracing circles on my palm that sent shivers through my entire body. I should have been terrified, should have questioned the wisdom of going home with a man I'd known for less than 24 hours, but rational thought had abandoned me the moment his lips touched mine. The SUV turned through gates that opened automatically, rolling up a private drive lined with trees that blocked any view from the road. When the house came into view, my breath caught. It wasn't a house. It was an estate, all stone and glass and modern architecture that somehow managed to look both welcoming and intimidating. Lights glowed from within, casting golden rectangles across manicured lawns. I counted at least 3 other vehicles parked in the circular drive, all black, all expensive. "You live here alone?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "I have security. Staff." His voice was casual, but there was an edge to it. "But my private quarters are exactly that. Private." Marco opened my door, and Dimitri helped me out with the same careful courtesy he'd shown at the restaurant. 2 men in dark suits stood near the entrance, their postures alert, eyes scanning constantly. They nodded respectfully as we approached, but I noticed how their gazes lingered on me, assessing, cataloging. Inside was even more impressive. Marble floors, artwork that belonged in museums, and a sweeping staircase that curved up to a second floor, but Dimitri didn't give me time to gawk. His hand pressed against the small of my back, guiding me past the public spaces toward a private elevator hidden behind a panel that blended seamlessly with the wall. "This goes directly to my quarters," he explained, pressing his palm against a scanner. The doors slid open with a soft whisper. "No one has access without my explicit permission." We stepped inside, and the moment the doors closed, the air between us changed. Charged. Dimitri turned to me, and the hunger in his eyes made my knees weak. "Last chance, Emma." His voice was rough. "If you want to leave, tell me now. Because once I have you, I won't want to let you go." The warning should have sent me running. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. "I'm not leaving." Something predatory flashed across his face. He backed me against the elevator wall, his body caging mine, hands braced on either side of my head. "Do you understand what you're agreeing to?" "No," I admitted breathlessly, "but I want to find out." His mouth crashed down on mine. And this kiss was nothing like the one at the restaurant. This was claiming, possessing, a storm of need that left me gasping. His hands were everywhere, tangling in my hair, sliding down my sides, gripping my hips and pulling me against him so I could feel exactly how much he wanted me. The elevator dinged, doors opening, but neither of us moved for a long moment. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were almost black with desire. Bedroom. Now. He led me through a living space that was all clean lines and expensive taste, but I barely registered any of it. My entire focus was on the man whose hand gripped mine like a lifeline, who looked at me like I was something he'd been searching for his entire life. His bedroom was massive, all dark wood and charcoal gray, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights far below. A king-sized bed dominated the space, covered in what looked like silk sheets. Dmitri released my hand and moved to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He handed me one, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Drink. You're shaking. I was. Not from fear, but from want so intense it scared me. I sipped the liquor, whiskey, smooth and expensive, and felt warmth spread through my chest. Better? He asked. A little. He set his glass down and moved behind me, and I felt his fingers at the zipper of my dress. May I? My nod was barely perceptible. The zipper descended with agonizing slowness, his knuckles brushing my spine and leaving fire in their wake. The silk whispered as it fell, pooling at my feet and leaving me standing in nothing but the underwear I'd worn. Plain, cotton, utterly unsexy compared to everything else about this moment. I started to cover myself, suddenly self-conscious, but Dmitri caught my wrists. Don't, his voice was harsh. You're perfect. His hands released mine to trace the curve of my waist, the flare of my hips. Every touch was reverent, worshipful, like he was memorizing me through his fingertips. When his lips pressed against my shoulder, I couldn't suppress the shiver that ran through me. Tell me you want this, he murmured against my skin. I want this. Tell me you want me. I want you. The admission came easier than expected. God, Dmitri, I want you so much it terrifies me. He turned me to face him, and what I saw in his eyes stole my breath. Not just desire, but something darker, more intense. Obsession. You should be terrified, he said softly. Because I meant what I said. I won't want to let you go. Then his mouth was on mine again, and I stopped thinking altogether. What followed was a blur of sensation. His hands exploring every inch of my skin, my fingers fumbling with the buttons of his shirt, the heat of his body against mine as he lifted me and carried me to the bed. He took his time, worshipping me with a patience that felt at odds with the hunger burning in his eyes. When he finally moved over me, when we finally came together, it felt like something fundamental shifted in the universe. Every touch was electric. Every kiss a promise, every whispered word in a language I didn't understand, but somehow felt in my bones. Afterward, I lay wrapped in his arms, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe. Stay, he murmured into my hair. I have work tomorrow. Call in sick. I lifted my head to look at him. I can't afford to miss a shift. His jaw tightened. You won't have to worry about that anymore. Dmitri, stay. His arms tightened around me. Please. The please undid me. This powerful, dangerous man saying please like I had any power at all. Okay. Just tonight. I felt him smile against my hair. Just tonight. But we both knew it was a lie. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the realization that I was alone in the massive bed. Panic seized me for a moment before I heard water running in what must be the bathroom. I sat up, pulling the sheet around me, and took in my surroundings with clearer eyes. The room was impeccably decorated but strangely impersonal. No photographs, no personal items beyond the expensive watch on the nightstand, and a phone that buzzed constantly. The water shut off, and Dmitri emerged wearing nothing but a towel slung low on his hips. Water droplets traced paths down his chest, and I noticed for the first time the scars. Thin, precise lines that spoke of violence, on his ribs, across his shoulder. One along his abdomen that looked like it had nearly killed him. He caught me staring. Occupational hazards. What do you do? The question I should have asked yesterday. He moved to the closet, pulling out clothes with economical movements. I manage various business interests. That's not an answer. No. He pulled on pants, then a shirt, his movements precise. It's not. Dimitri. Some things are better left unknown, Emma. His
For
voice
your
was
protection.
gentle but firm. Dread settled in my stomach. What kind of business requires that kind of protection? He didn't answer. Just finished buttoning his shirt and checked his phone. His expression darkened at whatever he saw there. I need to handle something. Marco will take you home when you're ready. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Breakfast will be brought up shortly. Wait. But he was already moving toward the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. This changes nothing, Emma. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine. Then he was gone. I sat in the empty bedroom, sheet clutched to my chest, and wondered what I'd gotten myself into. True to his word, breakfast arrived 15 minutes later, brought by a woman in her 50s who introduced herself simply as Maria and didn't bat an eye at finding me naked in her employer's bed. She laid out enough food for 3 people on a table by the windows and informed me that fresh clothes had been provided in the bathroom. The clothes fit perfectly. Of course they did. Marco drove me home in silence, and I spent the entire ride staring at my phone, which had 17 missed calls from Sarah and a text that simply read, "Are you alive?" "I'm fine," I typed back. "Long story." Her response was immediate. "You better tell me everything." But when I walked into my apartment building and saw the man waiting in the lobby, everything else fled my mind. He was tall, thin, with nervous energy that radiated off him like heat. His clothes were expensive but worn, and his eyes, when they landed on me, widened with recognition that made my blood run cold. "Emma Morrison?" I froze at the entrance. "Who's asking?" "You need to come with me. Now." He glanced over his shoulder like he expected someone to burst through the door at any moment. "It's about Dmitri Antonov." My heart stopped. "How do you—" "Please." Desperation tinged his voice. "He's not who you think he is. You're in danger. I don't know what you're talking about. He's Bratva, Russian Mafia." The man took a step closer, and I saw the bruises on his knuckles, the fear in his eyes. "And if you don't disappear right now, you'll end up like everyone else who gets too close to him." The world tilted. "I don't believe you. Then you're a fool." He pulled out his phone, showing me a photograph. Dmitri, standing in what looked like a warehouse, surrounded by men with guns. His expression was cold, ruthless. Nothing like the man who'd held me so gently last night. "He's dangerous, Miss Morrison, and now that you've been seen with him, you're in danger too." I stared at the photo, my mind reeling. The scars, the security, the way people moved out of his path, the careful way he'd avoided telling me what he did. "Why are you telling me this?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Because my sister made the same mistake you did. She thought she could handle him, thought she was special." His voice cracked. "They found her body 3 months ago." Horror washed through me. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just run." He pressed something into my hand. Keys. "There's a car 2 blocks from here. Blue Honda. License plate JKL 4729. Take it and disappear. Before he decides you know too much." He was gone before I could respond, disappearing into the stairwell like a ghost. I stood frozen in the lobby, keys digging into my palm, mind racing. This couldn't be real. Dmitri was... what? A criminal? A murderer? But the man's fear had been real. The photo had been real. I climbed the stairs to my apartment on autopilot, unlocked my door, and stopped dead. Someone had been here. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but I knew, the way I always knew when something was wrong. Item slightly out of place, a smell that didn't belong, cologne. His cologne. On my kitchen counter sat a small box wrapped in silver paper. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a phone, sleek, expensive, already powered on. A single number was programmed into it. And beneath the phone, a note in elegant handwriting. "For when you need me. And you will need me, Emma, because now that you're mine, there are those who will try to use you against me. Don't trust anyone. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll be watching. D." The phone rang before I could process what I was reading. Unknown number. I answered with trembling fingers. "Hello? Emma Morrison?" A woman's voice, cold and professional. "This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Metropolitan Police. We need you to come to the station immediately. It's regarding Dmitry Antonov." The police station smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Detective Chen led me through a maze of desks to a small interrogation room that made my skin crawl. Gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs bolted to the floor. She gestured for me to sit, then closed the door with a finality that made my stomach clench. "Am I under arrest?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "No. But you might be in danger." She sat across from me, sliding a folder onto the table between us. "How long have you known Dmitry Antonov?" 2 days. It felt like a lifetime, and no time at all. Her eyebrows rose. 2 days, and you're already spending nights at his estate? Heat flooded my face. "How do you—" "We've been watching him for 18 months, Miss Morrison. We know everyone who goes in and out of his property." She opened the folder, revealing photographs that made my blood run cold. Dmitry at what looked like business meetings with men whose faces were hard and scarred. Dmitry climbing into cars with tinted windows. Dmitry shaking hands with someone the caption identified as a known arms dealer. "He's the head of the Antonov Bratva, one of the most powerful Russian organized crime syndicates on the East Coast. Drugs, weapons, extortion, human trafficking." She tapped one photo. "This man? Found dead 3 weeks after this picture was taken. This one? Disappeared. This one? Killed in a car bombing that also took out his wife and 8-year-old daughter." Nausea rolled through me. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because women like you, decent, hardworking, vulnerable, are exactly the kind he preys on. You're not the first. You won't be the last." Her voice softened slightly. "But you can be the one who survives." "What do you want from me?" "Information, access. You're already in his bed, Miss Morrison. That gives you opportunities we don't have." She leaned forward. "Help us bring him down, and we'll protect you. We'll relocate you. Give you a new identity. Make sure you're safe." I stared at her, my mind racing. Everything she was saying aligned with what the man in my lobby had told me. The scars. The security. The careful evasion when I asked about his work. But I also remembered his gentleness. The way he'd looked at me like I was precious. The vulnerability in his voice when he'd asked me to stay. "I need time to think." "You don't have time." Detective Chen's voice sharpened. "Every second you're connected to him puts you at risk. His enemies will see you as leverage. His allies will see you as a liability. And Dmitry himself." She paused. "Men like him don't do relationships, Miss Morrison. They do possessions. And when he's done with you, or when you become inconvenient, you'll disappear just like the others. I want to leave." I stood on shaking legs. "If you walk out that door without agreeing to help us, we can't protect you." Then I guess I'll protect myself." I made it 3 blocks from the station before the phone Dmitry had given me rang. I stared at it for 2 rings before answering. "Emma." His voice was rough, urgent. "Where are you?" "Walking home from the police station." No point in lying. Silence. Then, what did they want? "To warn me about you. To recruit me to spy on you." I stopped walking, pressing my back against a building. "To tell me I'm going to end up dead if I don't run." "Are you going to run?" The question was soft, almost vulnerable. "I don't know." "Are you going to kill me?" "Jesus, Emma." He swore in Russian, the words harsh and musical. "Never. I would never hurt you." "But you hurt other people." It wasn't a question. Another pause. "Yes." The admission should have terrified me. Instead, I felt an odd sense of relief at his honesty. "I need to see you," he said. "Face to face. There are things you need to understand. I'm not coming back to your house. Then I'll come to you. 10 minutes. He hung up before I could protest. I made it back to my apartment in 8 minutes, my mind whirling. I should run. Should take the stranger's keys and disappear like he'd suggested. Should accept Detective Chen's offer of protection. But I did none of those things. Instead, I paced my tiny apartment, waiting for a man who terrified and attracted me in equal measure. The knock came exactly 10 minutes after he'd hung up. I opened the door to find Dmitry alone. No Marco, no security detail. Just him in dark jeans and a leather jacket that made him look younger, more dangerous. You came alone. I stepped back to let him enter. I told you. You're safe with me. He moved into my apartment, looking absurdly large in the cramped space. His eyes scanned everything, the peeling paint, the ancient appliances, the mattress on the floor that served as my bed. Say what you came to say. I crossed my arms, meeting the barrier. He turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes made my breath catch. Everything they told you is true. I am Bratva. I do terrible things to terrible people. I've killed. I've hurt. I've broken every law that matters. He took a step closer. But I have never, not once, hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and I have never involved an innocent. That man in my lobby said his sister, Irina Volkov, wasn't innocent. His voice turned cold. She was working for my biggest rival, gathering information to use against me. She got caught in the crossfire of her own making. He said you killed her. I didn't. But I won't pretend her death saddens me. He closed the distance between us, his hands coming up to frame my face. This world I live in, Emma, it's brutal. It's violent. But it has rules, and I follow them. I don't hurt women. I don't hurt children. I don't involve civilians unless they choose to be involved. And what am I? My voice cracked. What choice did I have in any of this? Every choice. His thumbs stroked my cheeks. You could have refused the ride, refused the dinner, refused to come home with me. At every step, you chose to be here. Because I didn't know. You knew something was different about me. You knew I was dangerous. You felt it from the moment I knocked on your car window. His eyes searched mine. But you came anyway. Why? I wanted to lie, to tell him it was desperation or stupidity or anything but the truth. But something about his gaze demanded honesty. Because when you look at me, I feel seen. For the first time in my life, I feel like I matter to someone. His expression crumbled. He pulled me against him, burying his face in my hair. You matter, Emma. God, you have no idea how much you matter. We stood like that for a long moment, wrapped around each other in my pathetic apartment while the world waited outside to tear us apart. I can't be involved in your world, I whispered against his chest. I can't be part of that violence. You won't be. I'll keep you separate. Safe. His arms tightened. But I need you to understand something. Now that my enemies know about you, they'll try to use you against me. That's not a threat. That's reality. I pulled back to look at him. So what do I do? You let me protect you. You trust that I know how to keep you safe. His hand came up to cup my face again. And you decide if what we have is worth the risk. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked it, and his entire demeanor changed, shoulders tensing, jaw clenching, eyes going cold and hard. What is it? Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. He was already moving toward the door. Dimitri, wait! He turned back, pulled me into a bruising kiss, then released me just as abruptly. I'll explain everything, I promise. But right now, I need to handle something. Is it about me? About the police? It's about someone who thinks they can take what's mine. The predatory look in his eyes made me shiver. They're about to learn otherwise. He left, and I locked the door behind him with shaking hands. I lasted 20 minutes before curiosity and worry won out over caution. I grabbed my coat and headed out, ignoring the voice in my head screaming that this was stupid. The blue Honda was where the stranger said it would be. The keys worked. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, heart pounding. I could leave. Right now. Drive away from Dimitri and his dangerous world and never look back, but even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't. Instead, I drove toward his estate. Toward the danger, toward the man who'd somehow become essential to me in less than 48 hours. The gates were open when I arrived. Never a good sign. I parked outside and approached on foot, my heart in my throat. Voices carried from inside, raised in anger. Russian phrases I couldn't understand punctuated by English words that made my blood run cold. Betrayal, punishment, example. I should have left. Should have run back to the car and disappeared like everyone kept telling me to. But then I heard Dimitri's voice, cold and controlled and absolutely terrifying. You touched what's mine. There are consequences. A gunshot cracked through the air. I ran. I burst through the entrance to find a scene from a nightmare. Dmitri stood in the center of his pristine living room, gun in hand, surrounded by his security team. On the floor, bleeding from the shoulder, was the man from my lobby, the one who'd warned me to run, Emma. Dmitri's voice was flat, emotionless. I told you to stay home. You shot him. I couldn't look away from the blood spreading across the marble floor. He broke into your apartment, planted listening devices, tried to turn you against me. Dmitri's eyes were like ice. He's lucky I only shot his shoulder. The wounded man laughed, the sound wet and pained. She'll never be safe with you, Antonov. They'll keep coming. They'll use her until there's nothing left. Dmitri moved faster than I could follow. The gun pressed against the man's temple. Say one more word about her, and I'll forget my rules about quick deaths. Stop! My voice cracked. Please, just stop. Dmitri's finger was on the trigger. The man was seconds from death, and I was the only thing standing between them. He's not worth it, I said, forcing my voice steady. He's already beaten. You've already won. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, Dmitri lowered the gun. Get him out of my sight, he told his men. Make sure he understands what happens if he comes near her again. They dragged the man away, leaving a trail of blood across the perfect floors. Dmitri turned to me, and the transformation was shocking. The cold killer melted away, replaced by something raw and desperate. You shouldn't be here. I know. You should have run when you had the chance. I know. He crossed the distance between us, his hands shaking as they came up to cup my face. Why didn't you? I looked into his eyes, storm gray, and filled with something that looked like anguish, and told him the truth that terrified me more than any gun, because I think I'm falling in love with you. His kiss was desperate, claiming, a brand that marked me as his in ways that had nothing to do with possession and everything to do with surrender. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. Then God help us both, Emma, because I fell the moment I saw you laughing in the rain. Outside, sirens began to wail in the distance. We need to leave, one of his men said from the doorway. The police are coming. Dmitri looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the question he was too afraid to ask. I took his hand. Where you go, I go. We didn't go back to his estate. Instead, Marco drove us to a penthouse in the heart of the city. One of what I was learning were many properties Dmitri owned. Safe houses, he called them. Places his enemies didn't know about. The sirens faded behind us as we climbed to the top floor, Dmitri's hand never leaving mine. His security team fanned out, checking rooms, securing exits. I watched it all in a daze, still processing the blood, the gun, the casual violence I'd witnessed. Emma. Dmitri's voice pulled me back. We were alone now in a living room decorated in shades of gray and chrome. Talk to me. I don't know what to say. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. 6 hours ago, I was a nurse's aide with debt and no future. Now I'm... What? A mob boss's girlfriend? An accessory to attempted murder? He knelt in front of me, his hands on my knees. You're not an accessory to anything. That man, Alexei Volkov, he's been trying to get to me for months. His sister's death was her own fault, but he blames me. When he found out about you, his jaw clenched. He was going to hurt you to hurt me. So you shot him. I would have done worse if you hadn't stopped me. His eyes met mine, unflinching. I won't apologize for protecting you, Emma. That's not who I am. I know. And terrifyingly, I did know. I understood on some fundamental level that this was his world. These were his rules. And if I was going to be in his life, I had to accept that. What happens now? Now, we wait. The police will investigate, but they won't find anything. I own half the precinct, and the other half knows better than to push. He stood, pulling me up with him. But there's something else we need to discuss. Dread settled in my stomach. What? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. For one insane moment, I thought he was going to propose. Instead, when he opened it, I saw a pregnancy test. My heart stopped. What is that for? We didn't use protection last night. His voice was carefully neutral. I need to know if there are consequences. The words hit me like a physical blow. Consequences. As if a child would be a problem to be dealt with rather than a life. I'm on birth control, I said, the lie coming automatically. I hadn't been able to afford my prescription for 3 months, but he didn't need to know that. His eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me, Emma. I had your medical records checked. Your prescription lapsed 92 days ago. Rage flooded through me, hot and cleansing. You had my medical records checked? That's illegal. That's necessary. He set the box on the table between us. Take the test, please. And if I'm pregnant, what then? You'll make it another problem to handle? Pay me off and send me away? His expression shifted, something dark and possessive flashing in his eyes. If you're carrying my child, Emma, you're not going anywhere. Ever. The certainty in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. That's insane. You can't just keep me. Watch me. He moved closer, backing me against the window. You think I'd let you walk away with my baby? Let some other man raise my child while I watch from a distance? His hand came up to rest on my stomach, the touch gentle despite the steel in his voice. If you're pregnant, you're mine. Completely. No debate. You can't force me. I won't have to. Because despite your protests, despite your fear, you want to stay. You want to belong to someone who sees you, who values you, who would burn the world down to keep you safe. His other hand cupped my face. Take the test. Prove me wrong. My hands shook as I took the box. I wanted to throw it back at him, to rail against his arrogance, his possessiveness, his absolute certainty that he knew what I wanted. But he was right. God help me, he was right. I locked myself in the bathroom and took the test with trembling hands. 3 minutes. The box said to wait 3 minutes. I sat on the edge of the pristine bathtub and counted every second. When I finally looked, the 2 pink lines stared back at me like an accusation, or a promise. Pregnant. I was pregnant with Dmitri Antonov's child. The bathroom door opened. I'd forgotten to lock it, and Dmitri stood in the doorway. His eyes found the test in my hand, and I watched something transform in his face. The cold, dangerous mob boss melted away, replaced by something raw and overwhelming. Emma. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides, dropping to his knees in front of me. His hands came up to cup my stomach again, this time with a reverence that made my eyes sting. My baby. You're carrying my baby. I don't know if I can do this. The admission tore out of me. I don't know if I can be with someone who solves problems with guns, who lives in a world where people get shot for revenge, where our child would grow up surrounded by violence. Our child will grow up protected, loved, wanting for nothing. His forehead pressed against my stomach, his voice muffled. I know I'm not a good man, Emma. I know I've done terrible things, but I would die before I let any harm come to you or this baby. Tears spilled down my cheeks. What kind of life is that? Always looking over your shoulder, always afraid. Then I'll leave. The words were so quiet I almost didn't hear them. I stared down at him. What? He looked up, and the emotion in his eyes nearly undid me. If being with me puts you in danger, if it means our child grows up afraid, then I'll leave. I'll disappear. I'll send you money, make sure you're taken care of, but I'll stay away. His voice cracked. I'll give you up if that's what keeps you safe. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. His hands tightened on my hips. But before I do, I'm begging you to give me a chance. Let me prove that I can keep you safe, that I can be the man you need me to be. I looked down at this powerful, dangerous man kneeling before me, offering to give up everything for my safety, and felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just obsession or possession. This was love, broken and desperate and real. 3 months, I heard myself say. What? Give me 3 months. 3 months to see if this can work, if we can build something real in your world. My hands came up to thread through his hair. But if I feel unsafe, if I think our child is in danger, I walk away, and you let me. Done. He surged up, capturing my mouth in a kiss that tasted like relief and desperation and promise. When he pulled back, his hand returned to my stomach. 3 months to prove I can be yours. That we can have this. The next 12 weeks were the strangest of my life. Dmitri kept his word. I saw none of his business, none of the violence that I knew existed just beneath the surface of his carefully constructed life. Instead, I saw doctor's appointments at private clinics where no questions were asked. I saw gentle hands on my growing stomach, reading pregnancy books in Russian and English. I saw a man who'd built an empire on fear learning to build a nursery with his own hands. He moved me out of my apartment and into the penthouse, surrounding me with security that felt less like imprisonment and more like protection. Maria became a constant presence, teaching me Russian phrases and showing me pictures of Dmitri as a child, a serious boy with storm-gray eyes who'd already seen too much. I learned about his past in pieces. An orphan at 8 when his parents were killed in a rival's attack, raised by an uncle who taught him the brutal mathematics of survival. Building his own organization from nothing, ruling through intelligence and ruthless efficiency rather than mindless violence. "I'm not a good man," he told me one night as we lay in bed, his hand splayed across my stomach where our baby grew. "But I'm trying to be better, for you, for our child." Sarah visited once, her eyes wide as she took in the penthouse, the security, the evidence of wealth beyond anything we'd imagined. "Are you happy?" she asked when we were alone. I thought about it, really thought about it. About morning sickness while Dmitri held my hair back, about falling asleep to Russian lullabies he sang off-key, about the way he looked at me like I was the center of his universe. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." But happiness in Dmitri's world came with a price. 2 months into our arrangement, I woke to find him gone, and Marco standing guard outside our bedroom door. "Where is he?" "Handling business, Miss Morrison. He'll be back soon." But soon turned into hours, and hours into a full day. My calls went to voicemail, my texts unanswered. When he finally came home at 2 a.m, there was blood on his shirt, and a hardness in his eyes I hadn't seen since the night he shot Alexei. "Don't ask," he said when he saw me waiting. "Please, Emma, don't ask." But I didn't have to ask. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly as he poured himself a drink. Someone had died tonight, maybe multiple someones. "Is it over?" My voice was quiet. "For now." "And next time?" "There's always a next time." He drained his glass, poured another. "This is my world, Emma. This is what I am." I crossed the room and took the glass from his hand, setting it aside. Then I pulled him down to me, wrapping my arms around him despite the blood, despite the violence he'd committed, despite everything. Then we handle it together. His arms came around me, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. "I don't deserve you. Probably not." I pulled back to look at him. "But you're stuck with me anyway." 3 months to the day after I'd taken that pregnancy test, Dmitri took me back to the restaurant where we'd had our first date. The same private room, the same view of the city lights, but everything else had changed. I was 4 months pregnant now, my stomach just beginning to show beneath the designer dress he'd insisted I wear. We'd survived attempts by rivals to use me as leverage, survived Detective Chen's increasing pressure to turn informant, survived the constant fear that came with loving a dangerous man. "I have something for you," Dmitri said, as dessert was cleared away. He pulled out a velvet box, and this time when he opened it, I saw a ring. Not ostentatious or showy, but beautiful, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the candlelight. "I know I don't deserve you," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "I know I'm not the man you should have chosen, but you're mine, Emma, you and our baby, and I want the world to know it." He dropped to one knee beside my chair. "Marry me. Make me the luckiest bastard alive." I should have asked for more time, should have demanded guarantees he couldn't give, should have been practical and cautious and smart. Instead, I said yes. The ring slid onto my finger, a perfect fit, and Dmitri pulled me into his arms like he'd never let go. And maybe he wouldn't. Maybe this obsessive, possessive, dangerous love was exactly what we both needed. "I love you," he whispered against my hair. "I'll love you until I draw my last breath." "I love you too." The words came easier now, even though you're absolutely insane. His laugh was warm against my skin. Sanity is overrated. 6 months later, I gave birth to a daughter with storm-gray eyes and a grip that could already wrap Dmitri around her tiny finger. He held her with the same reverence he'd shown my stomach that first night. This powerful man reduced to trembling awe by 7 pounds of screaming infant. "Katerina," he murmured, tracing her perfect features. After my mother, I watched him with our daughter and knew that whatever came next, whatever violence or danger or chaos his world threw at us, we would face it together. This broken, dangerous, perfect family we'd built from nothing. Detective Chen came to the hospital, her expression carefully neutral as she studied the baby sleeping in my arms. "Last chance to cooperate," she said quietly, "to get out before it's too late." I looked at Dmitri standing guard by the window, then at our daughter, then back at Chen. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She left without another word. 2 years later, I stood in the nursery of our actual home. Not a penthouse or safe house, but a real home in the countryside where Katerina could grow up with space to run, and watched my husband teaching our daughter to say Papa in Russian. The violence hadn't stopped. His enemies hadn't disappeared. But Dmitri had kept his promise. Our daughter knew nothing of her father's world except his love. I knew nothing except what I chose to see. Was it perfect? No. Was it safe? Probably not. Was it the life I'd imagined for myself that rainy night when my car broke down? Not even close. But when Dmitri looked up and saw me watching, when he smiled, that rare, genuine smile reserved only for us, when he crossed the room and pulled me into his arms with Katerina between us, I knew I wouldn't change a single moment. I'd slept with the Mafia boss and run straight into the life I was always meant to live. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. "What are you thinking about?" Dmitri murmured against my hair. "How lucky I am." I tilted my head back to look at him. How completely, impossibly lucky. His kiss was soft, sweet, everything the dangerous man shouldn't be, but was with me. When he pulled back, his eyes were warm with the love that had transformed us both. "The luck is all mine, Moya Lyubov. All mine. Outside, the sun set over the property we'd made safe, the family we'd built against all odds, the future we'd claimed despite everyone who said it was impossible. And in that moment, wrapped in the arms of the man who'd seen me when I was invisible, loved me when I was broken, and chosen me when he could have had anyone, I was finally, completely home."